Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into the sweltering, sweat-drenched bureaucracy of ancient China. Yes, really. Imagine yourself wrapped in 5 layers of embroidered silk, seated stiffly on a bamboo mat, stuck in a meeting that's lasted 3 hours and counting. The windows are papered shut, the incense is thick, and the summer heat, it's not just brutal, it's personal. You're not in modern Beijing or Shanghai. You're in the heart of the Tang Dynasty, maybe the 9th century, and your main enemy right now isn't political rivals or imperial edicts. It's your own armpits. The fans, delicate as they are, barely stir the air. Your robe clings, your scalp itches. Your superior just finished a long-winded speech about celestial omens and hasn't noticed that half the room looks ready to pass out. Oh, and spoiler, you probably won't survive this, at least not with your dignity intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift in your seat, trying to air out the back of your knees without looking insubordinate. It's not easy. Rank is everything in the Ministry of Personnel, and one poorly timed fidget can make the difference between promotion and permanent stagnation. You glance around. Your colleagues look just as miserable. Faces glistening, paper fans fluttering like dying butterflies. You're dressed properly, of course. An inner robe of thin cotton, a middle robe of dyed hemp, and the outer robe of formal silk with embroidered cranes. Combined weight, roughly a medium-sized dog. Your sweat doesn't soak through so much as get trapped and redistributed. You've invented 2 new kinds of itch in the past hour alone. Summer in Chang'an is no joke. The sun bounces off whitewashed palace walls, amplifying the heat like some sadistic mirror trick. The air doesn't move, except when it smells like cabbage from the servants' quarters or fish brine from the market road. One of your fellow clerks swears by putting slices of cucumber in his sleeves. You tried it once. A dog followed you for 2 blocks. Your only line of defense, aside from the occasional breath of breeze, is the small silk sachet tied to your belt, your perfume ball. It looks innocuous, like something a wealthy aunt might hang on a doorknob, but inside is a carefully balanced blend of herbs, minerals, and possibly powdered tiger claw. You're not sure. The apothecary winked too much when he sold it to you. You press it subtly to your neck and inhale. Notes of mint, camphor, maybe dried chrysanthemum. It's not just for show. The cooling effect is mild but real, at least enough to keep you from keeling over in front of your boss. More importantly, it masks the fact that you smell like steamed dumplings left in the sun. Interestingly, the obsession with smell is not merely personal, it's bureaucratic. In your world, scent is a language of power. Certain fragrances are reserved for higher-ranking officials. Jasmine, for instance, is considered appropriate only for those above the 5th rank. Use it prematurely and you risk a formal complaint, or worse, a promotion delay, which honestly feels worse than corporal punishment some days. Historians still argue whether these perfume balls were more medicinal or symbolic. Some scrolls emphasize their health benefits, cooling the blood, calming the spirit, expelling summer dampness from the body. Others treat them more like accessories, like status markers that telegraph your sophistication and, weirdly, your reproductive potential. Yes, really. The ancient Chinese bureaucracy, as it turns out, was a lot like high school, but with more poetry and actual consequences. If your sachet smelled like sandalwood, you were tasteful. If it smelled like cinnamon, try hard. If it smelled like nothing at all, you were probably poor. And if it smelled like fermented yak butter, you were either Mongolian or tragically misinformed. Your supervisor, a plump man with a permanent scowl and suspiciously fresh lotus aroma, clears his throat. Another scroll to review. You lean forward, ignoring the rivulet of sweat tracing down your spine, and pretend to read with interest. Your inner monologue, however, is entirely perfume-related. What is that scent he uses? Is it proprietary? Is it legal? One of the quirks of Tang Dynasty etiquette is the unspoken competition around self-presentation. A perfectly adjusted hat, pristine collar fold, and fragrant aura could mean the difference between being asked to review tax policy or being tasked with cleaning pigeon droppings from temple archives. You've done both. You prefer tax policy. There's also the health angle. Many believe that summer heat weakens the key or vital energy and opens the body to evil damp. A well-prepared perfume ball might contain not only aromatic herbs, but also powdered pearls, ground jade, and tiny amounts of arsenic, not enough to kill you, just enough to keep demons away. You think. You're not entirely reassured. In one particularly odd case documented in local folklore, an official fainted in midsummer only to revive once a sachet was placed under his nose. According to legend, the herbs within were selected under the guidance of a Taoist monk who claimed to have spoken to a mountain spirit. Skeptical? Same. But you start making mental notes anyway, just in case. A small bell rings. The meeting ends. Sweet relief. You bow, stand, and feel your joints creak like a bamboo ladder. On your way out, a younger clerk bumps into you. His scent, yuzu and something earthy, lingers as he passes. Ambitious. New money. He'll go far unless he sweats through his robe in front of the Empress's nephew next week. Outside, the light is softening, but the heat lingers. You walk home slowly, past spice vendors and crying infants adjusting your perfume ball as needed. You don't just want to smell good, you want to survive the season. And in this bureaucracy, that's a tall order. You wake up the next morning drenched in the kind of sweat that feels like betrayal. Even before your eyes open, you can smell your own exhaustion. Stale silk, last night's medicinal balm, and something faintly resembling onions. You sit up on your floor mat and reach instinctively for the perfume pouch by your headrest. It's damp. Lovely. You're not alone in this daily olfactory panic. In fact, for a Tang Dynasty bureaucrat like yourself, how you smell when you walk into the ministry is almost as important as what scrolls you've memorized. Enter the unspoken but deeply rigid smell cast system. Yes, there are layers to this madness. As you dress, you choose today's scent profile with the precision of a modern perfumer. You aim for competent but humble. Not too floral, you're not a concubine. Not too musky, you're not a general. Today's selection: dried plum blossom with undertones of camphor and just a pinch of crushed magnolia bark. Earthy, intellectual, slightly melancholic, like someone who reads Sun Tzu for fun but also rescues stray cats. Once fully robed, you step out into the heat wall that is late morning. You inhale through your sachet for a hint of personal salvation. You pass neighbors airing out quilts. You pass a fishmonger slapping octopus on a table. And every step you take, every whiff you inhale, builds your mental map of the city's perfume politics. Because the truth is, in Shanghai, every scent is a status symbol. Historians still debate whether certain fragrances were assigned officially by court protocol or evolved through social pressure. But the effect was the same. Your scent could literally define your social fate. Walk into a meeting with the wrong olfactory signature, and you might be mistaken for a scribe instead of a department head. Worse, someone might assume you're nouveau riche. In your ministry, jasmine means highborn and confident. Musk, when faint and paired with cedar, signals philosophical leanings and probably a drinking habit. Cassia is for the romantics. Lotus blossom? Risky. Unless you're an actual poet, it screams, I think I'm important. Sandalwood with deer musk? Bold. Borderline criminal. And it's not just what you smell like, it's what you detect in others. Your colleague Lou, the one who always acts like he's about to launch into a Confucian monologue, smells faintly of ginger and snake bile. You're not sure if it's a health regimen or a cry for help. Madame Zhu, the court calligrapher, leaves a trail of peony and mint. Rumor says she infuses her ink with scented oil. You're almost sure that's illegal, but her calligraphy is so divine no one cares. The sheer detail of it all is dizzying. It's not enough to smell nice. You must smell intentional. The difference between anise and fennel? Social suicide. 2 grams too much frankincense? Enjoy your new post at the border where the only perfume is goat. You arrive at the ministry's front gate and, as always, pass through the sniff corridor. It's not official, but everyone knows it exists, a 20-step path flanked by low-ranking scribes who absolutely judge you by scent. It's petty, but strangely comforting, part of the daily ballet of hierarchy. Today, someone mutters, plum blossom? Bold. Another voice adds, no, it's balanced with bark, subtle, scholarly. You pretend not to hear. Internally, you're glowing. You reach your office, a small side room near the record halls. The walls are lined with bamboo shelves and scrolls, but you can't help but notice the faint whiff of mildew. You'll have to light a cinnamon stick later, or someone will think you store pickles in here. Your supervisor visits mid-morning. His scent is aggressive today. Clove, orange rind, and something smoky that burns your eyes a little. You nod politely through his complaints about revenue reports, while quietly wondering if he's experimenting with Tiger Balm again. He leaves behind a smell cloud that hovers for a full 5 minutes, like a passive-aggressive perfume ghost. By midday, the scent hierarchy has started to feel like a second job. You've made a list of 10 scent combinations and the social consequences of each. You know that vetiver means discipline, but only when mixed with ginseng. Alone, it suggests constipation. You're considering a jasmine camphor blend for the next poetry recital, but last time, that got you mistaken for a eunuch's nephew. It's dizzying. Sometimes you wish you could go back to the days before all this. Before perfume balls were ubiquitous. Before your job came with olfactory expectations. But you also know those were worse days. Back then, body odor was a genuine public health concern. There's record of a prefect in the previous century whose armpit stench was so legendary that an entire courtyard was rebuilt to redirect wind flow away from his office. When perfume sachets became common, it wasn't just fashion, it was crisis mitigation. The early fragrance pouches were mostly medicinal, packed with herbs like huoxiang, patchouli, baiji, angelica, and dried orange peel, blended not for pleasure, but to prevent heat stroke and drive out bad humors. People believed strongly that summer heat invited sickness through the nose, and wearing a sachet acted as a portable wall of defense. But like all good ideas, this one mutated. Once nobles started customizing their own fragrance blends and debuting them at court, the humble sachet became the equivalent of a name-brand handbag. No longer just anti-sweat, now anti-mediocrity. One famous case involved a junior tax clerk who showed up smelling faintly of orchid root and deer antler extract. By noon, 10 officials had copied him. By evening, the court physician issued a warning that deer antler fumes might excite rebellious qi in the kidneys. The fad died by the next morning. The clerk was transferred to Mongolia. Back in your office, you tie your perfume ball tighter. You've got a presentation later and you're aiming for refined but worldly. You've added a shaving of amber to your blend. Risky, but it's paired with dried pomelo, so it balances. You step into the hallway and immediately clock 3 new scents from your coworkers. Someone's experimenting with rosewood. Pretentious, another with roasted star anise. What? And wait, is that fermented tofu? No, it's just the lunch cart. Still, your nose knows. And right now it knows that perfume isn't just part of your outfit, it's your identity. Your afternoon begins with a summons. A crisp scroll tied with a green ribbon arrives at your desk and your stomach tightens before you even read the name. You already know what it is. It's from the Department of Rights. Wonderful. You tuck the scroll into your sleeve and sigh. The Department of Rights is the fussiest wing of the entire bureaucracy, equal parts ceremonial authority and unlicensed drama troupe. They don't just manage protocol, they curate vibes. Seasonal festivals, palace banquets, temple processions, they oversee them all, and they take olfactory atmosphere disturbingly seriously. And now they want you. Specifically, they want your presence at tomorrow's Summer Harmony ritual. A lavish affair involving 24 officials, 1 terrified deer, and a floating lotus platform that never quite floats. Your role? Scent compliance. Yes, that's a real thing. You're not surprised. Your fragrance choices have gotten some attention lately, and not all of it bad. Last week, someone from the astrological board nodded approvingly at your sachet during lunch. The week before that, a minor poet called you aromatically mysterious, which could be either flattery or a hex. You're still unsure. So now, summoned to the scene of seasonal pageantry, you need to figure out what scent to wear that will both appease the Department of Rights and not make you smell like a sentient temple. As you walk the corridor to the perfume archives, a real place, complete with incense-curing chambers and a historian who speaks in rhyming couplets, you start listing ingredients in your head. Sandalwood? Too smoky. Gardenia? Too feminine, though beautiful. Pine resin? Traditionally lucky, but a nightmare in humidity. The archivist, an unnervingly cheerful woman named Mistress He, greets you with a bow and the subtle scent of lemon verbena. Her robe is layered with hand-painted cranes, and her eyebrows are shaped like mountain ranges. Looking for ritual blends, are we? she chirps, already pulling scrolls and little clay jars from shelves. Something for the harmony right? You'll want a base of agar wood. No exceptions. Don't argue. You don't, she explains, with the excitement of someone who hasn't seen daylight in a week, that the scent profile for a summer harmony event must balance three elemental energies: fire, represented by warmth and floral sweetness; water, fresh, minty, cooling notes; and earth, deep, grounding woods or herbs. Too much fire and you'll seem overzealous. Too much water and you'll fade into the background. Too much earth, you'll smell like a ceremonial broom. You test blends until your nose forgets how to interpret reality. One sachet smells like fresh peaches and regret. Another smells like a monk's sandals after pilgrimage. Finally, you find one that's intriguing, floral but with depth, as if someone buried a garden under layers of history. Mistress, he smiles. That's my seasonal signature. I call it cicada at dusk. You'll take it. Back in your quarters, you tie the sachet carefully, then prepare your robe for the ceremony. The fabric must be light but formal. The colors, pale blue and soft green, summer hues chosen to reflect sky and bamboo. You lie down that night, trying not to sweat, sachet resting near your head, the scent already settling into your dreams. The next morning, the ritual begins before the sun fully rises. You and a cluster of fellow officials board small ceremonial boats on the lotus-filled river that curves past the summer palace. Each official has been assigned a fragrance zone, your designated southern petal breeze, which sounds like a tea flavor but actually refers to a particular quadrant of the water platform. The ceremony is slow and riddled with symbolism. A monk chants about harmony between realms. A young court musician plays the zither in a key that no one quite enjoys. You hold your scroll and try to look serene, even as mosquitoes declare war on your ankles. Your scent. Cicada at dusk works its quiet magic. The breeze carries it gently across the platform. A nearby noblewoman nods approvingly. The Empress's third cousin-in-law pauses mid-bow to sniff the air. Your supervisor raises one eyebrow in a way that says, "You've overachieved, and I hate it." Historians still argue whether these ceremonial scent rituals were genuinely spiritual or just very elaborate pageantry. Some suggest they were deeply tied to Taoist notions of balance and cosmic alignment. Others think they were just another excuse to waste public funds on artisanal incense. Either way, the perfume ball you carry feels like a talisman, something that connects your sweaty, bureaucratic existence to a greater, more fragrant purpose. Just as the ceremony ends and everyone begins to bow their way off the platform, disaster strikes. One of the junior officials, a red-faced young man with a penchant for coriander-based fragrances, sneezes violently. His sachet bursts. The scent that escapes is pungent, no, sour, like old vinegar and damp hay. Gasps ripple across the platform. A noble faints. A monk glares. The zither player stops mid-pluck. The boy is escorted away in shame. You hear someone mutter, "Clearly amateur work, no balance, probably homemade." You, on the other hand, remain composed, elevated even. Your scent holds steady, cool, floral, complex. You're beginning to understand something profound. In this strange olfactory dance, the perfume ball is not a mere accessory. It's armor. Invisible, fragrant armor. Back in the city that evening, you hear whispers. People are talking about the calm official with the dusk scent. Your neighbor tries to recreate it with boiled roses and peppercorns. It ends poorly for everyone. You sleep well that night, for the first time in a week. The summer heat hasn't eased, but somehow you've mastered it, or at least masked it convincingly. And in the Tang Dynasty, that's almost the same thing. The next morning, you wake up to what sounds suspiciously like a squirrel fight on your roof. But it's not squirrels, it's your neighbor's apprentice, banging around with bundles of camphor bark and thread, attempting to copy your now famous scent. You roll over and groan into your pillow. Fame, it seems, comes with echoing thuds and the sweet stink of envy. You drag yourself up and shuffle toward your wash basin. The water is already lukewarm. Of course it is. You splash your face, then reach automatically for your perfume pouch. Still fragrant, still cicada at dusk. But you know you can't ride this one scent forever. Fashion in Chang'an is as ruthless as it is fragrant. You need to evolve. And so, after breakfast, which tastes mostly of boiled millet and regret, you decide to visit someone you've avoided until now, Old Master Ren. Old Master Ren is not a perfumer by trade. Officially, he's a retired alchemist who once invented a failed immortality elixir that turned a minor prince blue. Unofficially, he's one of the few people in the capital who understands how to make scent blend with heat, humidity, and human anxiety. And unlike Mistress He doesn't care about harmony. He cares about effect. You find him where you expect, in his narrow alley shop wedged between a tofu vendor and a bookstore that only sells banned poetry. The air smells like someone's incense collection exploded. He greets you without looking up from his brazier. You're the bureaucrat with the famous scent. I liked it. Very poetic. Very cautious. You flinch slightly. Cautious? I can make you something better, he continues, rummaging through a clay jar labeled simply, "Do not." You start to protest. You explain that you're not looking for anything too dramatic, just something that stays unique, sophisticated, maybe a touch elusive, he snorts. That's what everyone says before they fall in love with saffron. He lines up ingredients: dried tangerine peel, crushed chrysanthemum, powdered deer musk, bits of smoked sandalwood. He talks while he blends, muttering about yin-infused resin and how scent enters the spleen. You nod along like any of this makes sense. He holds up a small silk pouch and says, "This one's called Storm Beneath the Fan." It doesn't announce itself. It waits. You take it home. The scent is strange, like petrichor after a fire, a hint of char, then something unexpectedly soft, like dried plum skin. You wear it that evening to a quiet garden dinner with a few low-level ministers and their wives. You don't mention the new scent. You let it waft. The reactions are subtle but unmistakable. One of the wives leans closer and murmurs, "That's interesting." Her husband coughs into his wine. Another minister starts telling a story, then forgets halfway through, eyes a little glazed. You pretend not to notice, but you do notice the rising popularity of fragrance experimentation around you. It's becoming a minor obsession in official circles. One week, everyone's trying civet and sage. The next, someone's peddling scented silk, robes soaked in fragrance until the wearer smells like a walking incense stick. You're pretty sure at least 2 of your coworkers are going broke over it. Historians still debate whether this fragrance frenzy was ever truly encouraged by the court or simply tolerated as a fashionable distraction. Some suggest it was a subtle form of political display. Those who could afford refined blends demonstrated power. Others think it was just a way to cope with summers that felt like slow roasting in a bureaucratic oven. Either way, you're in it now. You spend the next week refining your process. You start wearing a different scent for each part of the day. Invigorating mint and pomelo in the morning, a grounding cedar sage blend in the afternoon, and Storm Beneath the Fan for evening appearances. It's exhausting, but weirdly satisfying. You invent a drawer system in your cabinet to sort your sachets by mood and event. Passive-aggressive performance review, visiting relatives who ask about your salary, and third cup of tea but still no promotion. You begin to notice how even your peers are getting strategic. Minister Gao, who used to smell vaguely of pickled bamboo, now arrives wearing a sandalwood clove blend that practically roars, "Anne, I'm a very serious man with absolutely no secrets." His secretary? Something floral but sharp, like a rose bush, with trust issues. You also notice the consequences of olfactory missteps. A promising junior clerk accidentally combines spikenard and fish oil in a last-minute sachet mix. By lunchtime, no one will sit next to him. He tries to claim it's a provocative rural note, but his career begins to smell suspiciously like exile. At one poetry recital, a rival attempts to upstage everyone with a scent made from fermented pear skin and cinnamon. People gag. A cat faints. You win a spontaneous round of applause for merely not smelling like spoiled compote. Of course, there are deeper implications too. The fact that scent can manipulate perception means that everyone is playing a constant game of fragrant theater. You once overheard a judge muttering, "He said he was innocent, but he smelled of treachery, bergamot, and lies." No one questioned it. Even you begin to second-guess what you once trusted. Is that intern truly humble, or is his shy demeanor just the effect of wearing soft marjoram and rabbit fur oil? Did that new counselor actually meditate in the temple all morning, or did he just marinate in sage and patchouli? You've joined an invisible war, one fought not with swords or scrolls, but with notes, base layers, and fleeting hints of something that might be myrrh. You find yourself standing longer in crowded courtyards, just inhaling. You can now identify 16 fragrance profiles blindfolded. You begin to respect the artistry, but it's also exhausting. One evening, after a long day of whisper politics and overly perfumed banquets, you find yourself alone on your porch, watching the moon rise above the rooftops. You breathe in deeply. Your sachet tonight is empty, deliberately, and somehow the smell of night, quiet, earthy, a little damp, is the most honest thing you've experienced all week. You wake to thunder, not from the sky, but from your upstairs neighbor attempting a rain dance to appease the spirits of fragrance mishaps past. She's using bells, foot stomps, and, inexplicably, a goose. Welcome to midsummer in the capital, where everyone's slowly melting and slowly losing it. It's been a few days since your silent moonlit moment, and you've returned to your fragrance routine, albeit with a new wariness. You've begun to sense that all this scented posturing isn't just for court rituals or poetic superiority. It's strategic. Take, for instance, the sudden popularity of a blend called Night Jasmine at War. You first notice it on one of the palace guards, whose usual stench of leather and onions has been replaced by something mysterious, almost sharp. Then another bureaucrat shows up to morning petitions wearing it, and suddenly gets his case reviewed in half the time. Coincidence? You think not. You begin mapping who wears what and what happens afterward. A few patterns emerge. Peppermint and camphor, usually sported by junior scribes trying to stay awake during 10-hour document copying shifts. Lotus and apricot blossom, favored by mid-tier officials eager to project approachable but secretly ruthless. Musk-heavy blends, popular among men with powerful uncles and very little actual talent. And you? You've gone minimalist again. Just a hint of chrysanthemum and sandalwood. Quiet confidence. At least that's what you tell yourself. Still, the game is escalating. At your next departmental meeting, your superior, Magistrate Huo, enters smelling like an entire forest temple after a fire. It's potent, overwhelming. Someone coughs. Someone else whispers, "Is that aged agarwood?" You know what this means. Scent dueling has begun. Historians still argue whether the term scent duel ever appeared in official records or if it was simply whispered around tea houses and bathhouses. But one thing's certain, once you start using smell to assert dominance, it's only a matter of time before someone else raises the stakes. The duel begins with whispers, then a mild arms race. Magistrate Huo returns the next day with a blend clearly incorporating powdered jade and dried orchid root. You respond by quietly switching to a rare phoenix fruit blossom note, delicate, expensive, imported only through dubious sea routes. You hear a courier mutter as you pass, "He smells like a coastal wind wrapped in secrets." Victory. For now. But you're not the only one watching. Behind every scent choice, someone else is sniffing the air, taking notes. The eunuchs, for one, have developed an entire unofficial ranking system of court officials based on olfactory power. You hear about it at a bathhouse. Tier 1, fragrances that command respect. Tier 2, fragrances that stir curiosity. Tier 3, fragrances that cover fear. Tier 4, fragrances that smell like old soup and bad decisions. You're somewhere between tiers 1 and 2, but only barely. There's also gossip about a secret group within the Imperial Library, scent theorists, or nose scholars, who analyze aromatic profiles the way others read faces or handwriting. They claim to predict someone's moral decay by whether they use too much vetiver. You think they're nuts, but also you avoid vetiver, just in case. Then, one afternoon, you get an invitation. Not from the Department of Rights, not from Old Master Ren, from the Empress's personal maid. You gulp. It's not a summons, per se. It's phrased delicately. Her Majesty has expressed curiosity regarding the fragrance currently favored by the official of records who attended the summer harmony rite. A compliment, wrapped in an interrogative. You don't have a choice. You prepare. You visit Mistress He for advice. You visit Master Ren for insurance. You even visit that strange boy who sells illegal incense cakes shaped like animals, just in case he knows something everyone else doesn't. In the end, you settle on a blend that took 3 days and 2 accidental nosebleeds to perfect. It's light and airy at first, like standing near cold stone and morning mist, then blooms into something warmer, almost like sun-baked cedar, before settling into a whisper of roasted tea. You call it court whisper. You're escorted through 5 layers of silk curtains, screened courtyards, and hushed corridors until you arrive in the Empress's private garden. a place rumored to have plants that bloom only when spoken to kindly. The Empress is not present, of course, just her maid, her steward, a lady-in-waiting, and the Imperial Nose. Yes, that's a real job. The Imperial Nose, an elderly woman with terrifying eyebrows, circles you once, then twice, inhaling with the intensity of someone assessing the soul of your kidneys. She says. Not unpleasant. Refreshing top note, hints of ambition and, sadness? You try not to visibly flinch. She'll like it, the steward says, scribbling notes. You may leave your sachet for replication. You're dismissed. Like a human recipe. That night, you sit in your quarters, wondering whether this is the peak of your career or the beginning of your unraveling. Your new sachet, the one you made just for this, is gone. It now belongs to the palace. You wonder if they'll rename it. Autumn Echo. Maybe, or politely ambitious minor official. Either way, you'll never wear it again. You lie back, your room hot and too quiet. For once, there is no scent hanging in the air. You miss it already. And somewhere in the palace, a new whisper begins. Who made the Empress's new favorite? They don't know your name yet, but they will. You wake up sweating through your robe, a single sentence echoing in your skull. I've created a monster. Well, not a monster exactly, just a scent. But when the Empress adopts your blend and curly autumn veil, things change. Fast. Your name isn't officially attached, of course. You're just that record keeper, the one with the subtle wrist movements and impeccable timing. But that's enough. Suddenly, senior officials are lingering a little longer in hallways when you pass. Eunuchs whisper when you approach. You get invited to 2 more ceremonies and one suspiciously vague garden strategy brunch. And then come the requests. Some ask nicely. Others offer gifts, rare inkstones, pickled mangoes, tickets to puppet plays no one wants. One minister, clearly new to the game, slides a note under your door at midnight. Your scent or your silence, preferably both. You ignore him. But you realize quickly that this is no longer about poetry or personal expression. This is politics now. Fragrance is the new scroll. And you, somehow, have become a translator. You begin hosting quiet consultations. Nothing official. Just a few minutes at a tea house here, a courtyard stroll there. Yes, Minister Liang, plum blossom can soften your otherwise extremely terrifying aura. Or, no, Senior Clerk Bai, combining patchouli and mint, does not make you seem energetic and grounded. It makes you smell like an anxious herbalist. Some of your coworkers call it frivolous. They say scent isn't a battlefield. But then you remember the sharp rise of fur balsam among junior envoys, each trying to project northern ruggedness during imperial meetings. Or the sudden reappearance of ambergris among treasury inspectors, a substance so expensive it practically whispers bribery. Historians still argue whether the imperial court ever officially sanctioned scent as a form of self-presentation. But by now, it's clear to you. Perfume has become a soft weapon, a silent language, a velvet mask. You're not the only one using it well. A mysterious figure begins appearing at events, always positioned just behind someone important. He's average height, average looks, utterly forgettable, until you get a whiff. It's disorienting, like plum wine, but sharper. Beneath it, a flicker of myrrh and iron. You ask around. No one knows his name. He becomes known among whisperers as the lingering whisper. Naturally, you start to investigate, purely out of self-preservation, of course. You discover he's not a bureaucrat. He's an envoy, possibly unofficial, sent from a southern province with a reputation for rebellious governors and overfunded perfumeries, the kind of place where peacocks outnumber people. Rumor has it he uses perfume not to charm, but to confuse. Supposedly, one official reported losing track of an entire negotiation after sitting too close. You dismiss it, except the same thing happens to you. At the Summer Lantern Review, he brushes past you. Just a flicker of scent, and your mind goes foggy. You forget the title of the poem you were about to recite. You say something about goats instead. There is polite, confused applause. Humiliated, you retreat. But also, you're impressed. You spend the next 2 weeks researching counter scents. You consult old scrolls on nose fatigue, a phenomenon described by Tang-era scholars as when the nose loses its will to care. You learn about masking layers, anchoring roots, and how certain combinations can neutralize mental haze. You spend an entire afternoon sniffing horse sweat and charcoal in your courtyard like a madman. Finally, you create a defensive blend, bitter orange peel, monk's pepper, a trace of smoked tea leaf. It's not pleasant, but it clears the head. You test it at a poetry reading. He's there, so is the scent. But this time, your mind stays sharp. You quote the classic of mountains and seas backward. A bit much, but people are impressed. He notices you. Later, you find a tiny pouch in your satchel with a note. Nice counter, your move. You realize this is personal now, a perfume rivalry, an olfactory chess match. You begin pushing boundaries. You experiment with rare materials like tree resin harvested from cliffs during lightning storms or flower oils extracted by monks who never speak. You create scent narratives, blends that change over time, evoking specific emotional arcs. One starts as sweetness, dips into bitterness, and ends on a ghostly cool note. You name it unsent letter. People feel it. Some cry. One person tries to marry you. You refuse, but give them a sample. Meanwhile, the lingering whisper keeps matching you. His scents are more unpredictable now. One smells like wet stone and regret. Another reminds you of old pine needles and falling asleep during exile. This could go on forever. But then, during the mid-autumn banquet, the Empress herself comments, "The air has grown dense with ambition. I wonder what we've started." Everyone laughs politely, but you freeze. She knows, not just about the scents, but the duel. The quiet war beneath the fans and calligraphy. And in that moment, you realize the game may have gone too far. You begin to scale back, you simplify your blends, you return to gentle notes, things that comfort rather than impress. Your old favorite, Cicada at Dusk, makes a comeback. It's not a retreat exactly, just a recalibration. Others follow suit. The palace halls smell softer now, less like confrontation, more like memory. You start to feel human again. And one morning, as you sit in the garden sipping plum wine before work, you catch a faint, unfamiliar scent in the breeze. It smells like rice paper and warm wind. You smile. No competition, just a whisper, a hello from him. Maybe, just maybe, the duel is over. For now. You're sitting in your usual garden corner, knee-deep in bureaucratic reports about canal maintenance and regional grain yields, when a familiar scent drifts past, rice paper and warm wind. Again, subtle, intentional. He's still playing. You glance up, half expecting to see the lingering whisper standing in a tree like a smug, scent-based ninja. But no, just the gardener, and some bamboo rustling in the late afternoon breeze. Still, it's clear now, this duel has become a quiet friendship. And in truth, you're glad. The high-stakes olfactory warfare was getting exhausting. You hadn't realized how tightly you'd been clenching your jaw until the game paused. With your nose once again freed from the burden of psychological warfare, you begin to notice things again. The way jasmine opens only in the evening, the sharpness of old cedar beams in sun. The fact that your writing brush has begun to smell faintly of lacquered cherry from overuse. You also start revisiting older texts, treatises on scent, scrolls on court behavior, even a few memoirs left behind by faded officials. That's how you stumble on one particularly odd volume in the corner of the library, written in shaky brushstrokes by someone named Yin the Nose. Apparently, Yin was a low-level tax auditor who left behind an 800-page scroll chronicling which scents caused which reactions in various governors. There are diagrams, charts, and an entire section on the political application of incense during negotiation, which includes instructions for hiding camphor pellets inside tea bricks. Historians still argue whether Yin the Nose was a real person or a bored librarian inventing a pseudoscience, but you find yourself captivated and mildly concerned about the number of dried petals stuffed into your sleeve. Because here's the thing, you're not just surviving court anymore, you're influencing it. When a senior minister walks into a meeting reeking of sour dates and power desperation, you notice others wrinkle their noses. When a regional envoy arrives wearing a rustic blend of pine and citrus bark, there's nodding. Authentic, someone whispers. And you've become the trendsetter. You're summoned to the Hall of Perfumed Rites. Yes, that's real now. It's a repurposed archive room filled with scrolls about traditional aromatics, now used for meetings about court scent culture. Somehow, you've been named interim fragrance protocol consultant. You didn't apply. You don't recall saying yes, but there your name is carved into a small sandalwood plaque. At your first meeting, an older court official leans over and asks, "How do I smell more confident without alarming small animals?" You blink. He's serious. So you recommend a mix of toasted sesame and bergamot paired with dried bamboo. It works. He starts being invited to more gatherings. You watch it happen. Another official follows suit, this one requesting something that suggests wealth, but in a humble way. You give him dried persimmon, peach leaf, and just a breath of clove. He smells like well-managed investments. Promotions follow. It's both absurd and incredible. You're not alone, though. The Empress's court has also begun assembling scent historians, collectors, and scholars of ancient recipes. There are talks of an imperial archive of aromatic knowledge. The scrolls are being restored. Fragrance samples are being cataloged. The entire palace has become a curious blend of library and flower stall. Of course, not everyone's happy about it. The hardliners in the Ministry of Law claim this scent obsession is a distraction from serious governance. They draft a strongly worded memorandum. The nose is not the mind. You write an anonymous response. Try breathing without one. Mysteriously, the memo disappears the next day. Meanwhile, summer is entering its cruelest phase. It's too hot to think, too humid to breathe. Even the birds stop singing after noon. In this sweltering silence, you notice that even the most perfumed court officials begin to fade. Their precious sachets become damp, their powdered beads clump, their intricate blends sour in the heat. And suddenly, the most valuable scent isn't complex. It's clean. You find yourself craving simplicity. The smell of cooled rice, the sharp relief of mint leaves crushed between fingers, the crispness of rain-soaked linen. You return to Mistress He's shop. She laughs when she sees you. Finally, tired of smelling like you're trying to win something? You nod. She presents you with something wrapped in faded silk. You open it and inhale. It smells like memory. Clean floors, summer rains, your mother's hair after she stood in sunlight too long. You say nothing. She smiles. No name for this one, she says. You just wear it. And you do. You wear it to the next court session. It's so light, no one comments. But a few turn their heads toward you without knowing why. One eunuch later tells you it felt like standing in a temple before the bells ring. You don't correct him. Because at last, you've learned something important. Restraint carries power. Even the lingering whisper seems to understand. At a garden party that evening, he appears at your side, says nothing, just nods. You nod back. His scent that night? Barely there. A hint of steamed barley and dew. You sit beside one another for a long while, watching dragonflies skim the lily pond. And for once, the air is full of silence. You've reached a strange new milestone in your life. People stop asking what you do and start asking what you recommend. Not about policy, not about taxation. No, about the vibe. Do I smell approachable? Someone murmurs as they pass you in the corridor. Or, should I lean more chrysanthemum or green tea for my in-law visit? Or, most chilling of all, would camellia petals make me look weak during a property dispute? At first, you try to answer each question with nuance. It depends on the emotional temperature of the room. What's your secondary scent layer? How windy will it be? But soon there are too many queries, and your answer simplifies. Don't overthink it. Smell like someone who bathes. The truth is, while the court continues to spin its wheels in fragrance frenzy, you've begun exploring something deeper. It begins with a single question. Why scent? Why not color, or clothing shape, or hat tilt? Why is it scent that's grabbed this palace by the throat? Gently, of course, with pleasant overtones of gardenia. You consult an archivist with a mind like a dried inkstone. He blinks slowly and tells you scent is memory. That's why it wins. So you begin to dig, and what you find is this. Fragrance in ancient China was never just luxury. It was medicine, it was philosophy, it was cosmic alignment in powdered form. During the Han Dynasty, scholars believed scent could balance internal energies. Wood-based scents cooled excess fire. Bitter roots calmed disruptive thoughts. One scroll even describes a perfume used to settle debates: mint, salt, and pine needle. Historians still argue whether it was actually calming or simply too strange to continue fighting near. And don't forget the Taoists. To them, scent wasn't just sensory, it was spiritual architecture. They used incense to map space, delineate transitions, and shift consciousness. A properly chosen fragrance could open the path between body and sky. You start experimenting. One evening, you light a tiny incense blend called River's Edge and sit still for an hour. No writing, no conversation, just breath and smoke. You emerge from the trance feeling like you understand your ledger sheets emotionally. It's disturbing and oddly beautiful. Word spreads. Suddenly, you're invited to strange new gatherings, moonlit aromatic meditations, incense duels judged by blindfolded monks, even a midnight symposium called Scent as Political Compassion that lasts 3 hours and smells like steamed pear. These events attract not just courtiers, but thinkers, philosophers, disillusioned poets. One mathematician who only speaks in riddles and smells like burnt orange rind. You're all asking the same thing. What does scent unlock? And for a brief, shimmering moment, it feels like the court has remembered its soul. People begin developing scents for thought. Students wear sandalwood and pepper root while copying sutras. Calligraphers experiment with ink infused with lavender, claiming it improves their strokes. One monk accidentally creates a blend so relaxing that it causes 3 scribes to fall asleep mid-edit and approve a highly illegal canal tax. You hear about a historian who's built an entire timeline out of fragrances. She walks through her study trailing different smells to signify dynastic changes. Warring States is burnt juniper and panic, she says, while Tang is osmanthus and self-esteem. You laugh, and then you start thinking in those terms too. Your own blends shift with the day. Morning means cedar and salt air, sharp and grounding. Afternoon brings barley and orchid. Evening, plum, sage, and whatever you've spilled on yourself during dinner. You start to write down your observations, not for public release, just for yourself. You title the document Notes on Wind or How the Nose Knows Things. One line stands out. A good scent does not distract, it leads. Meanwhile, the palace begins adapting too. Rooms are subtly scented according to purpose. Meeting halls lean toward lemon balm and hinoki. Rest chambers carry hints of hay and polished rice. One corridor, known for intense political debates, now features a barely there waft of valerian, just enough to stop people from flipping tables. Even the bureaucratic reports begin to smell better. Literally. Someone starts perfuming official correspondence, matching scent to tone. Reprimands arrive with myrrh and rue. Congratulations come smelling of pear blossom and faint ego. Of course, some push back. A vocal group of scent purists argue that too much aroma creates false diplomacy, that a man shouldn't have to question whether a compliment is sincere or sandalwood enhanced. They wear no perfume and walk about proudly like human radishes. You don't argue, you just light a little camphor when they pass. Privately, though, you do worry. Has this gone too far again? Because you remember when this started. When perfume was a tool to survive the heat, to soothe the body, to soften the sharp edges of imperial summer. And now you're 3 scrolls deep into the metaphysics of clove vapor. Still, you tell yourself this is curiosity, not obsession. And besides, something new has begun. You've started dreaming in scent. It's subtle at first. A vision of a wheat field carries a dry, sunny note. A dream of your childhood room smells like polished pine and ink. Even nightmares come with their own olfactory atmosphere. One involved a collapsing ceiling and the unmistakable stench of overripe lychee. You confide in the lingering whisper. He nods solemnly and says, "Yes, the dreams begin eventually." Eventually? You ask what happens next. He says, "You stop needing words for people. You remember them by how they felt in the air." Then he walks away, smelling as always like mystery and fermented peach. And somehow you know he's right. Because these days, when you think of the Empress, you don't picture her robes or her voice. You remember the faint scent of cooling earth she carries. When you think of the late-night scribes, it's old wax and smoke. And when you think of yourself, you pause. It smells like clarity. You're lying flat on your back in the archive of aromatic knowledge, staring at a ceiling so old it smells like time itself. Dust, cedar, and a whisper of ink from 1,000 bureaucrats before you. The afternoon heat has silenced everything. Even the bureaucratic birds, those gossipy sparrows nesting near the Ministry of Rights, have gone quiet. It's been a strange week. Someone proposed standardizing scent-based greetings. A bow paired with lotus means, "I respect you." A nod with clove means, "I respect you, but not that much." The proposal is currently stuck in subcommittee due to arguments over the pomelo blossom's perceived sarcasm. You voted abstain, politely, using a vanilla sachet. But beneath the perfumed absurdities, something else is shifting in the court. You sense the bureaucracy itself beginning to change shape. Not officially, nothing dramatic, The tax ledgers still stack like stubborn bricks. But in subtle ways, people are reorganizing themselves, not by status, but by scent. You've noticed it in how people cluster in meetings. Peppermint thinkers sit near citrus thinkers. Jasmine souls avoid the cinnamon crowd. Musk officials, those intense, whispery types who seem to be always plotting something vaguely philosophical, stand near doorways, brooding like fragrant gargoyles. And you're a floater. A little barley, a little ink, a hint of whatever fruit was served at lunch. People drift toward you, not because you demand attention, but because you've come to smell like comfort and clarity. You're becoming a bureaucratic hearth fire. And so naturally, you are summoned to the smelling room. It's not officially called that. It has a proper name, the Office of Ritual Harmonies. But everyone calls it the smelling room because that's all anyone does in there. The walls are lined with drawers filled with dried herbs, powdered roots, incense chips, and scrolls tied with ribbon. A quiet hum of beeswax candles warms the air. There's always a slight breeze, too gentle to be from nature. Probably a eunuch with a fan behind a screen, paid in sesame sweets. Here, a small but powerful group of officials gather daily to decide the palace's aromatic theme for each day. It used to be seasonal, simple. Spring was blossom, summer equals mint, autumn will smoke, winter equals something you can smell through 14 layers of coat. But now, it's more psychological. Today's chosen theme is subtle longing with mild suspicion. So everyone's wearing variations of smoked sandalwood, green apple peel, and a top note of damp granite. You suggested it as a joke, and they took it seriously, because now you're one of them. You sit on the council, nodding thoughtfully as an official with trembling hands proposes adding a whisper of bitter melon to evoke unrequited love. You don't laugh. That would be cruel. Instead, you recommend adding only one dried sliver per incense blend. Otherwise, it overpowers the moss. You're learning diplomacy by smell. Of course, not all outcomes are successful. One blend meant to suggest polite rejection was so confusing that 3 suitors thought they'd been accepted and a minor marriage crisis erupted. Another blend, intended to signal urgent imperial favor, accidentally gave everyone a headache and a week-long craving for smoked pork. Historians still argue whether that one was sabotage or just someone misreading an ancient recipe. And then there are the personal incidents. You walk past an assistant archivist and suddenly stop. He smells like your childhood home, like the clay rooftop after rain, like the paper lanterns your grandmother used to light during the Mid-Autumn Festival. You freeze. He looks up, startled. Did I do something wrong? You just shake your head. No. You did something? Right. You don't explain. How could you? But later that day, you ask Mistress He for a blend, something to anchor you. She hands you a pouch filled with cypress and barley ash. It won't take you back, she says, but it'll keep your feet here. That night, you light it before bed and sleep dreamlessly for the first time in months. In the morning, you make a decision. You'll write a new guide, not a catalog of ingredients, not a history, something else. A manual of etiquette, but through scent. How to say sorry with mugwort, how to ask for help with burnt sugar and thyme, how to signal heartbreak without saying a word. You call it the gentle language. No one asked you to write it. No one will pay you. But something about it feels important. A record of this strange moment in court life when people decided it was worth smelling like kindness. And soon, people start whispering about your book. Not aloud, just in glances and subtle sachet swaps. Someone leaves a note under your teacup with a scent you described 2 days ago. Another person starts wearing your recommended "I'm not mad, just disappointed" blend. And then one morning, you enter the smelling room to find your manuscript resting at the center of the table, with a ribbon, and a single apricot blossom laid on top. No one says a word, but all eyes turn to you. And in that quiet, warm air, surrounded by the scent of orange peel and reverence, you understand something. You've helped make meaning from the invisible. And maybe that's all you ever wanted to do. The sun has shifted. Its light in the palace now carries a soft, golden haze as summer begins folding quietly into autumn, bringing relief not just in temperature, but in scent. You walk through the corridors feeling the subtle change in the air. Less heavy musk, more crisp notes of dried leaves and early chrysanthemums. Even the incense recipes have adjusted, replacing the heavier camphor with light strokes of clove and sandalwood. Autumn at court is a subtle performance. Not the loud festivals of spring or the blazing heat of summer, but a quieter elegance, like the way a silk sleeve brushes a marble table. Soft, deliberate, and full of unspoken meaning. You attend a gathering where officials bring their personal autumn blends. One man's concoction is a mixture of smoked rice, ginger, and faint traces of tangerine peel, evoking the harvest and the promise of winter stores. Another smells of cooling earth and pine resin, grounding yet wistful. It's in this atmosphere that a new figure enters your life, a visiting scholar from the South known only as Master Fen. His reputation precedes him, an expert in ancient aromatic texts, rumored to have studied secret Taoist scent rituals that could supposedly open the soul's window. You're intrigued and somewhat skeptical. After all, you've heard many grand claims that dissolve under the palace's heat like wax candles. But Master Fen's presence is calming, like a cool draft through a tea house. He carries a small wooden box filled with rare herbs and resins, dried lotus petals, crushed star anise, and a powder made from orchid root. He offers you a sample and instructs you to breathe slowly, eyes closed. As the scent unfolds, cool lotus, sweet anise, earthy orchid, you feel a lightness inside you, like the first breath after holding underwater. It's a strange sensation, physical yet almost spiritual. He explains that in certain Taoist practices, scent is not just smell, but a tool to align one's internal qi, the life energy flowing through the body. By inhaling specific aromatic combinations, one can cleanse the spirit, sharpen the mind, and even influence dreams. Historians still argue whether these effects are purely psychological or have a physiological basis. But you can't deny the calm that settles over your chest after the ritual. Master Fen invites you to join a small circle of seekers, individuals experimenting with scent to explore consciousness beyond the day-to-day. They meet in quiet gardens at dusk, surrounded by incense and paper lanterns. You attend your first gathering, a mix of bureaucrats, poets, monks, and artisans. The conversation drifts between philosophy, history, and the practicalities of scent making. No one is in a rush. Time seems to slow. At one point, a poet recites a verse about how fragrance is the breath of memory, a bridge between what was and what could be. It resonates with you, especially after months of living amid perfumes and powders. You begin to keep a journal of these experiences, recording the blends used, the thoughts that arise, and the dreams that follow. Some nights bring vivid visions, a floating garden, a river that sings, faces made of smoke. Others offer peaceful silence. Meanwhile, back in the palace, the aromatic politics continue. There are disputes over the official scent for upcoming festivals. Some favor traditional plum blossom, others suggest more experimental blends combining imported spices. You watch these debates with a mix of amusement and wariness. Despite the sometimes absurd disputes, you realize that scent has become a language all its own, one that shapes relationships and power in subtle ways. One evening, as autumn deepens, you find a letter slipped under your door. The handwriting is delicate, the paper fragrant with sandalwood. It's an invitation to present your gentle language manual at the Imperial Academy alongside Master Fen's teachings. You smile, the faint scent of crushed mint lingering on your fingers. The journey you began with a simple perfume ball has become something unexpected, a path into the heart of memory, power, and perhaps a little peace. And as the lantern light flickers in your room that night, you wonder what scent tomorrow will bring. You step into the vast hall of the Imperial Academy, a space that smells like old parchment, polished wood, and just a whisper of incense, something floral and elusive, like a secret the walls themselves are keeping. The seats fill quickly with scholars, courtiers, and the occasional curious eunuch, all drawn by the promise of something new, a merging of old wisdom with the evolving art of scent. You're surprisingly calm. Not because you've prepared some grand speech, there's none of that, but because you know this moment is less about performance and more about connection, about sharing what you've learned and learning in return. The first speaker is Master Fen. His voice is soft but sure as he walks through the ancient Taoist theories of aromatic qi, explaining how certain blends were believed to awaken dormant energies or bring clarity to muddled minds. He passes around vials containing powders and dried petals. People inhale deeply. Some close their eyes, others scribble notes furiously. Then it's your turn. You present the gentle language, your humble manual of scent etiquette. You read aloud passages explaining how certain aromas convey feelings more delicately than words ever could, how the choice of fragrance can soften a rebuke or add weight to a compliment, and how scent weaves an invisible tapestry binding the court together. A few raised eyebrows, some murmurs of approval. You notice a young poet nodding enthusiastically, her fingers stained with ink and faintly perfumed with jasmine. You end with a simple thought: to understand scent is to understand silence, a silence that speaks louder than any decree. The room hums with a new kind of energy. People begin to discuss, not the political machinations you're used to, but how scent shapes mood, memory, and even trust. Later, you're approached by a group of scholars who argue passionately. Historians still debate whether the ancient texts about scent were practical guides or metaphorical poetry. One insists that much of the Taoist scent lore was symbolic, intended more for meditation than real-world use. Another counters that empirical evidence from herbals and medical scrolls supports the physical effects of aromatic plants. You listen, intrigued by the debate. It mirrors your own journey between practicality and philosophy, scent as survival and scent as spirit. The afternoon fades into evening. The hall is bathed in the glow of paper lanterns and the warm scent of burning osmanthus. Conversations drift like smoke, some serious, some playful. You find yourself drawn into a smaller gathering. Artists who use scent to inspire painting and calligraphy, monks who incorporate fragrance into ritual dance, and a mathematician who composes scent-based puzzles. They tell stories of how scent transcends language, how it triggers emotions too deep for words, and how sometimes a well-chosen aroma can settle disputes better than any argument. You share your own observations, how scent can create connections, soften tension, and offer a kind of invisible kindness in a world too often loud and sharp. One artist offers you a small brush soaked in violet oil, saying, "May this scent inspire your next chapter." You tuck it into your robes, feeling its gentle weight. As the night deepens, you realize you've become part of something larger, a circle of seekers exploring the boundaries of perception and tradition, blending the past with the present. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between words and scents, you sense a future where the invisible language of fragrance might just speak the truth more clearly than any spoken decree. The seasons keep turning, and so do the wheels of the palace bureaucracy, slow but relentless like an ancient clock grinding dust between its gears. You've settled into a rhythm now, a strange balance between the fragrant and the functional. Morning scrolls still arrive with the weight of taxes and court decrees, but beneath the surface, an aromatic revolution is quietly underway. Your manual, The Gentle Language, has been copied, annotated, and circulated, sparking small but meaningful changes in how people relate. You notice it in the corridors, where once sharp words flew like arrows, now there's a pause, a subtle exchange of scent-laden notes before a difficult conversation. Sometimes you catch a faint whiff of lavender on a usually gruff official before he gives a grudging compliment. Your role has evolved too. No longer just a lowly scribe or perfumer, you're now a consultant, someone summoned to advise on ceremonial scents, diplomatic gifts, and even marital negotiations. It's a curious sort of power, wielded invisibly, through the scents most taken for granted. You attend a tense negotiation between two feuding clans, both deeply suspicious of each other's intentions. Tempers flare, voices rise. But then you introduce a blend, gentle jasmine to soothe, a touch of clove to encourage openness, and a whisper of mint to clear the mind. The room's atmosphere shifts. People lean in, eyebrows soften, a handshake follows where none was expected. Historians still debate whether scent really changes minds or if it's just a clever placebo in the theater of politics. But in moments like this, you don't care. You see the results. Meanwhile, palace life hums with its usual oddities. Eunuchs carry secret bundles of herbs, gossip spreads like wildfire scented with rose petals, and courtiers obsess over the smallest changes in perfume trends. Did you hear that Minister Li switched from sandalwood to rare agarwood? Scandalous. You keep your own supply of scent balls handy, small silk pouches filled with powdered herbs to refresh your aura during long meetings or to deflect unpleasant company. They're your little armor against the stress of endless protocol. One evening, as you prepare your blend for sleep, a soft mix of mugwort and chrysanthemum. You remember the stories you heard as a child about imperial officials who wore perfume balls to avoid the oppressive summer heat and the spreading of disease. Those little sachets were more than just fragrant accessories. They were a form of protection, a talisman against both the physical and emotional burdens of court life. You smile at the thought. History isn't just dusty scrolls and forgotten dates. It's living, breathing, sometimes scented, and it's right here, in the way you carry a little piece in your pocket. And as you drift towards sleep, you wonder what scents tomorrow will bring. The chill of early winter wraps the city, its breath carrying the sharpness of frost and the distant promise of snow. You pull your robes tighter, the fabric whispering against your skin, as you navigate the winding palace corridors now decorated with winter chrysanthemums and paper lanterns. Winter in the palace means more than just cold air. It means the return of heavier scents. Resinous cedar, warm cinnamon, and rich pine needles fill the halls, transforming the cold into something almost cozy. You recognize these aromas as a kind of seasonal armor against both the bitter wind and the harshness of palace politics. One morning, as you sip your tea infused with star anise and ginger, you're called to a private audience with the head of the Ministry of Personnel. The official, a stern woman with a reputation as sharp as crushed peppermint, wants your advice. She explains that morale among the junior clerks has been sinking. The weight of endless paperwork, strict hierarchies, and winter gloom is crushing their spirits. They're showing signs of burnout, foggy minds, frayed tempers, and the kind of silent resignation that smells faintly of stale ink and lost dreams. You propose an experiment, a series of scent breaks, short moments during the day where clerks can inhale carefully curated aromatic blends designed to refresh, inspire, and restore. The official raises an eyebrow but agrees, perhaps amused or desperate enough to try anything. You design blends combining uplifting yuzu with calming chamomile and bright pine with soothing clove. Small sachets are distributed discreetly, tucked inside drawers and between scrolls. The results surprise everyone. Within weeks, complaints decrease, and even the most dour clerks are seen exchanging small smiles and small sachets. Historians still debate the effectiveness of scent therapy in ancient bureaucracies, questioning whether the observed improvements were due to fragrance or simple human kindness. Finally allowed some expression, but you know better. You've felt the change yourself, the way a simple scent can unlock a window in the mind, letting in fresh air and light. Meanwhile, rumors spread of a secret guild of scent makers who serve the emperor directly, crafting perfumes so rare they border on the mystical. Some say their ingredients come from distant mountains and jungles. Others whisper they include rare minerals and even crushed pearls. You're invited, unexpectedly, to meet with one of these scent masters, a tall figure cloaked in silk embroidered with faintly glowing threads. The master's workshop smells of ancient woods, amber, and something indefinably exotic. They show you vials of liquid that shimmer in candlelight and powders that shift color when touched. They speak in riddles about capturing the soul of the mountains and bottling the breath of the sea. You listen, fascinated and slightly skeptical. But you leave with a small vial of perfume labeled only for clarity in winter's darkest hours. That night, as frost paints the windows and your room fills with the soft glow of a paper lantern, you inhale the scent. It's crisp and sharp but comforting, like the clear, cold air just before dawn. And for a moment you feel the long, dark winter retreating, not just outside, but deep inside you. Winter deepens and the palace seems to breathe in slow, deliberate rhythms, as if resting before the inevitable burst of spring. You move through this quieter time with a new sense of purpose, carrying your vial of clarity perfume like a secret talisman. The court is less crowded now, many officials away on duties or retreats, leaving room for reflection and subtle change. You notice how even the simplest aromatic touch feels amplified in this stillness, the faint smoke of sandalwood curling from a distant altar, the clean sharpness of pine needles pressed into a sachet. One afternoon, you're invited to a rare ceremony deep in the palace gardens. The air is crisp and the earth is softened by frost, but lanterns hang among bare branches, glowing softly like captured stars. The ritual is an ancient one, intended to honor ancestors and clear away winter's gloom. It's a blend of incense, music, and slow, deliberate movements, all designed to awaken senses dulled by cold and confinement. You watch as courtiers hold small perfume balls, their delicate aromas mingling with the smoke rising from charcoal braziers. The fragrances are subtle, a mix of dried chrysanthemum, winter jasmine, and a hint of frankincense. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, the scents weaving through your mind like a gentle tide. Memories surface, not just your own, but echoes from long before you, whispers of emperors and scribes, of gardens and quiet rooms filled with scent. There's a moment of stillness, almost sacred, where the present seems to dissolve and you feel connected to something vast and unknowable. After the ceremony, a trusted friend, a poet known for her delicate verses, shares with you a curious thought. Perhaps scent is the oldest language of all, before words, before writing, when all we had was breath and air. Historians still argue whether scent was ever truly a language or simply an evocative force. But in moments like this, the distinction feels unimportant. You share your own experience, how scent has become a gentle companion through the noise and formality of court life, a reminder that beneath titles and decrees, we are all human, breathing, feeling, remembering. The poet smiles, offering a tiny pouch embroidered with plum blossoms. Inside is a new blend, soft pine, sweet orange peel, and a whisper of mint. You accept it gratefully, knowing you'll carry this gift with you through the final days of winter, a fragrant promise of renewal. As the sun sets and the garden darkens, the scents linger, gentle, persistent like the slow turning of the seasons and the enduring rhythms of life itself. Spring arrives like a whispered promise, soft and slow, carrying the subtle warmth of new beginnings. The palace gardens awaken, tender buds push through frost-hardened earth, and the air fills with the scent of fresh blossoms and damp soil. You walk among the flowering plum trees, their delicate white and pink petals drifting like snowflakes, mingling with the fresh green of new leaves. The fragrance is both invigorating and soothing, a perfect balance after the long winter. The court buzzes with renewed energy. Officials exchange greetings with lighter hearts, and the scent of chrysanthemum oil perfumes the silk robes worn for the spring festivals. You sense a collective sigh of relief, as if the palace itself is breathing easier. You carry your own perfume ball, now a blend of jasmine, green tea, and a trace of musk, fresh but grounded, a reminder of the journey you've taken through seasons, scents, and secrets. In quiet moments, you reflect on what you've learned, how something as simple as a fragrance can carry weight beyond words, how scent can soften harsh realities and offer small pockets of peace, how the ancient practices of carrying perfume balls were not mere vanity, but tools of survival and connection. You recall the quirky tales you've uncovered, officials hiding perfume balls to mask the stench of summer heat and disease, secret scent guilds crafting mystical aromas, and the ongoing scholarly debates about whether these traditions were practical, symbolic, or somewhere in between. There's comfort in the ambiguity. History, after all, is never just one thing. It's a tapestry woven from facts, stories, smells, and dreams. As the palace awakens fully into spring, you feel a quiet gratitude. For the past seasons, for the invisible language of scent, and for the journey itself. A winding path through the lives of those who came before, who carried perfumes not just on their robes, but in their hearts. You breathe deeply of the spring air, soft and fragrant, and step forward into the new day. The scent of spring lingers softly as you settle into stillness. Your breath slows, matching the gentle unfolding of petals outside your window. Each inhale carries memories of warmth and coolness, of fragrances mingled with whispers of history. Remember the delicate perfume balls tucked away in ancient robes. More than just tokens of luxury, they were companions against heat, stress, and loneliness. They were tiny talismans, carrying hope and calm through seasons of change. Now, as your eyelids grow heavy, imagine the quiet gardens where lanterns glow softly and the air is sweet with chrysanthemum and pine. Imagine the careful blending of scents, the ritual and poetry, the invisible threads connecting people across centuries. The past and present fold together, like the gentle layering of jasmine over sandalwood, distinct yet harmonious. Feel the peace that comes from knowing that even in the most complex places, courts bustling with power and intrigue, there are moments of softness and scent, moments where humanity breathes through the ages. Let that calm settle in your chest, easing the day's weight. Let the invisible language of fragrance carry you gently into dreams. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.